Hey YouTubers, and welcome to a new series on my channel in which I and maybe another YouTuber are going to be pitching ideas for any type of project that is already connected to a pre-existing series. Basically, this means we can talk about almost anything, be it television, movies, comic books, manga, books in general, video games, or what have you. And then we'll be talking about how we'll take that particular concept or anything and kind of expand upon it, be it in a sequel, prequel, reboot, TV series, TV special, video game, or anything else. As long as we find it interesting, we're going to talk about it. And also, I should make it clear, while I'm refraining from using this particular platform to talk solely about Dragon Ball, you can expect a couple of interesting Dragon Ball related ideas to be discussed in this series going forward. And with that being said, my guest today, you've seen him in the debate series, you've seen him in discussion videos that we've had.
Yeah, and you've probably seen me on wanted posters and stuff around the area for being an asshole. I'm Will King Kanji, guys. And thank you, Mark, for bringing me onto this show. I'm really looking forward to getting into this. It's going to be a really interesting topic, I think.
Yeah, and like I said before, like this series will not really kind of pertain to just solely Dragon Ball stuff, but what would a Ginyu Force either TV special or, essentially a Ginyu Force movie look like? And, Kanji, you want to just jump in here and tell everyone basically your initial pitch for that?
Yeah, totally. I mean, it's no secret to me that I am a big fan of the Ginyu Force. I mean, my favorite fight in the entirety of Dragon Ball Z, just Dragon Ball in general, is Vegeta versus Recoome. I loved that fight, and I know I'm generally sort of in the minority of how much I actually really like the Ginyu Force, but if I were to try and do a special myself, I'd be very interested in trying to delve into, the past of how the Ginyu Force have come together and their recruitment side of things, and possibly touching upon the fact that Ginyu's body might not be his original one. These are all things that we've all thought about. It's general sort of fan speculation when you sit down and you think, oh man, I wonder if there have been previous members of the Ginyu Force that have been replaced, or maybe this is a different body or something like that. But for me, it comes into it. Goldo to me seems like such an outcast of the squad. I would love to see if they did a TV special that they're sort of recruiting that final fifth space in the Ginyu Force, and they've got all these people lined up, and they're trying to do the general sort of auditions to try and make it into the squad, and Goldo is just like the worst one there, and everything he does is just utter crap, and he just can't do anything right. He just doesn't look like he's going to end up winning, and I quite like the idea of maybe some tragic accident happening to the rest of them, and then Goldo being the only one left, and they're kind of like, we stuck with Goldo? Really? This guy? Okay, we'll give him a chance. And then later on it turns out he's actually got the time control ability, but he just hadn't used it for the entirety of it. Like in typical Toriyama fashion, why didn't you do that if you could have done? Sort of, I didn't know! So, like one of those typical things, but it would just be a nice kind of way, because that way we'd be able to see loads of funny things with the Ginyu Force acting silly, but they get called out to their first job or something with Goldo on the team, and you get a chance to see the darker side of the Ginyu Force, because the thing I love about the Ginyu Force is the contrast of comedy and intimidation and that dark feeling to it. Recoome captures the essence brilliantly. But I don't know if there's anything you wanted to expand on with what I've been going into, because I know that your take on the Ginyu Force isn't quite the same as mine.
Well, yeah, actually it's weird, because the one thing you mentioned before is this Ginyu's body? That's one of the things that a lot of fans have really speculated. There's really no way to tell one way or the other. Obviously, I think we can all assume that it's probably not. If he's had this ability and he's used it so just freely as we've seen him do throughout the series, obviously I wouldn't say that this is his body. It seems like he's more of a rodent. If we can kind of expand upon who Ginyu is, what I would really like to say and see is, essentially I would like kind of at least a backstory, whether they don't show it or not, and essentially he was nothing more than he was a frog now, but he was basically a frog when he started, or some kind of rodent or anything that has basically been working his way up the food chain for the entirety of his life. Because for what it's worth, he is kind of a coward. He's incredibly powerful. He knows how to fight and everything, but he's a coward. He's just a flamboyant coward. So yeah, it would be really interesting to see. Although, if you were actually to have this thing where a lot of people would think, well, okay, maybe when we make a movie about this, you have Ginyu kind of come in and is like, well, that's not Ginyu, and this guy over here is Ginyu. How do you make that a twist that throws people for a loop?
Yeah, right. So, part of the thing I'd been kind of thinking of was with the whole recruiting Guldo side of things. I think it would be quite funny if maybe when you first are introduced to the Ginyu Force, you're seeing this guy that the other members of the Ginyu Force are kind of respecting and looking up to, but it's quite clearly not the Ginyu that we all know. And they're talking about him and, like, you know, sort of, it maybe his body is getting weak or something, maybe he's dying, maybe he's getting old, something like that. So anyway, they've done this recruitment process because they want to get a replacement for Ginyu's body. So basically what they're doing is they're holding these auditions, telling them that these guys, that there's going to be one lucky additional space on the Ginyu Force squad. And so all of these guys are lining up and they're doing their auditions, one by one, they're killing them off and stuff as they disappoint them in some, like, you know, funny fashions or something. And then it gets to the point where something, as I say, because this has always got to be the twist, something tragic happens, and that mystery other member of the Ginyu Force that we'd never seen before dies, and we're only stuck with these two last auditioning people. And, like, one of them is Goldo, and the other person is the guy that has Ginyu's body that we're all aware of. And Ginyu's had his eye on this guy for his body, and he decides that, you know, okay, I'm just going to steal his body. But because of this tragic accident, now they're going to have to fill the spot, so they end up having to fill the last spot with Goldo, because it was either that or he was going to have Goldo's body, and he was like, nah, I don't want Goldo's body, sort of thing. So it's, I don't know, like, it's just a couple of funny twists. I mean, that to me sounds like it could be done within a couple of scenes, but I don't know whether they want to pertain to flashbacks or something in the film to try and, like, you know, drag it out a little bit. I don't know, but it's just a couple thoughts.
Mm-hmm. And the one thing that we were talking about before we even started doing this was essentially how would you kind of go back and retcon his ability to begin with. And I really liked your idea about him having spatial perception, where he basically makes a dome, and anyone who says the word change is actually kind of changes him in that body or whatever he's kind of looking at that time, because just that word was said and there's a certain dome. It would make a whole lot more sense, especially when you think about switching Goku, Vegeta, the Frog, or Tagoma, even if that's going to be considered canon now. So that's a really interesting thing too. And obviously, like I said, the only thing I would really want to see is kind of a backstory on Ginyu, and I want to make it clear that I want him to be kind of someone who's worked his way up. I feel like he's someone who really appreciates and can understand what it means to have power and what it means to not have power.
Yeah, but one of the things I really like the idea of is the fact that the Ginyu Force was completely, like, non-flamboyant or something until Ginyu changed bodies with this person that was in the audition, and all of a sudden now he's got the urge to dance and do all this stuff, and he decides to tart the Ginyu Force up with all these special poses and stuff. And I like the idea of that being the first time that we see it, because, as I'd mentioned earlier, like, when you see Frieza see them for the first time and they arrive on the planet, and, you know, you're aware that obviously he's going to be aware of them. I mean, they're his special force. But they get out and they do the special pose, and he's almost sat there kind of embarrassed, like, is this my elite squadron, sort of thing? And that would give off the impression he doesn't see him do it very often. So that either means he doesn't come into contact with them, or he's not really aware of what Ginyu looked like last time he saw him, or this whole flamboyant dance posing thing is just completely new and alien to him. So it'd be nice to see them kind of work that into it as well.
I mean, that's a really interesting idea. I feel like they're really interesting, but to me, the comedic tone that they struck at the time of basically the Frieza Namekian saga or whatever, what have you, it was a little bit too comedic and it just jarring for me as a kid, and I've never really gotten over that for one reason or another. So they have never been my favorite. In fact, I've always said that the Ginyu Force to me is the weakest part of the show, barring filler, I think, barring filler.
I mean, like, it's funny because I agree with you to a certain extent, because I believe, personally, when I look at the Ginyu Force bits, my favourite bit, as I was saying earlier, my favourite fight was Vegeta versus Raccoon, but my favourite actual part of the Ginyu Force event, as it were, was the Raccoon bit, just simply because he gave off this perfect transition, no matter what dub you watch it in, whether it's the original, the Funimation, or the Ocean dub, whatever you're going to watch it in, his character kind of gives off this funny vibe, and then he's construed with this amazing ability to intimidate as well. But then when you get to the whole bit with Berta and Jace, it's kind of a bit old now already, sort of thing. And obviously because Goku had turned up and they didn't stand a chance, I felt like that bit kind of dragged quite a bit, because Goku could have just wiped the floor with them immediately, and he let them do all the fancy stuff with the purple the purple comet and all this stuff. And it just kind of got old quite quickly. And then Jace survives, then goes and fetches Ginyu and stuff, and it all just kind of dragged on a little bit. I mean, the comedic aspects were good, but I understand what you're saying. They're a little bit kind of off-putting at the time. They didn't really sit with the mold that was being set currently at that particular point. However, I will say I do believe in Japanese it's a little less jarring because it doesn't come across as silly. I know it kind of sounds a bit hard to explain, but obviously Chris Sabat's version of Raccoon's voice is very hard to take seriously. So, I don't know if that has a big effect on anybody else's perception, but it did mine.
You do well. You do. Yeah, exactly.
I mean, one thing I would want to say is if they could do it with the Bardock special, I do honestly feel they could do it with the Ginyu Force special. I actually feel like the Ginyu Force had more relevance to the series than obviously Bardock, obviously not being one of Akira Toriyama's original creations. I feel like if they can do a special with that, they could do a special with the Ginyu Force. It doesn't have to be any longer than like a 40-minute special. You could cram so much fun and entertainment into the 40 minutes without people getting bored or anything. And I just feel like it's an opportunity that could be wasted if they don't capitalize on it. And if it was me, I would go ahead with it. I mean, because why not make more content? You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. And that's one of the things that I feel like Toei just isn't capitalizing on with Super in general, or Dragon Ball in general, is they have not capitalized on the wealth of characters that they actually have. And to give them 45-minute, 40-minute specials would just be amazing. Obviously, we can cross our fingers and hope that the Universe 6 people get that or anything.
Yes.
But with that, all that being said, I want everyone who has listened this far to kind of tell me, first of all, if you've listened this far, go down in the comment section below, and before you actually start typing your opinions or thoughts on like what we've said or what you would like to see in a Ginyu Force movie, go and make sure to hashtag Ginyu Force rules. In the comment section below, because we do like reading y'all's hashtags or any hashtag that you think might be funny for this. It'd be awesome. I do really enjoy reading those things. But tell us what you thought about this idea. Tell us what you thought about Kanji's idea. Essentially, it was really his idea in the comment section below. And if you haven't actually checked out Kanji yet, you really should. I'm going to leave his link in the description below as well in the video, basically in the beginning and right now. And y'all should really go check him out. He does amazing content. It's super funny. He's always on the debates. Maybe we'll get rid of him at some point, but not now. We're gonna keep him in. We're gonna keep him in now. Do it. No, guys, if you seriously, if you haven't checked him out, you really should. But anyway, Kanji, thank you for joining me on this video today.
Anytime, man. It's always a pleasure. It's always a pleasure, man.
Yeah, it's always good to get like a serious video between us when we can.
Rarely happens.
It's just fun and games between us, guys. Anyway, if you've gotten this far on anything, just have a nice day and bye.
Bye!
We'll be right back.